It's my pleasure to introduce Paul Williamson. He's working on alternative energy way ahead of the curve. And as from the last State of the Union address, we know this is now a national security issue. Paul Williamson is a special assistant to the provost in his hydrogen project and the COT New Campus project. And we're really very delighted to introduce him to you.
Thank you much. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Glad to be here and have the opportunity to kick off this semester's ethics extravaganzas. As you all know, I've been working in the alternative energy area for a few years here and have the opportunity to do even more on it now. And so looking forward to working with you as there's interest out there, and also working with other entities, and we'll get into it as we move forward here. And let's see if we can get this. Okay, here we go. So the name of the talk is Energy Paradigm and Ethical Conundrum, and we'll work through this as we go through it. There's a lot of things that you have to ask yourself as you start thinking about alternative energy and all the different parameters that are involved in it. And one of the things is, what role do you play personally in this? We are facing a whole energy crisis that's on the horizon, if we're not in it already, and every one of us is going to have to play a role in it. So we want to look at this and how we do it affects us. And first of all, how you use energy. Most people don't realize how much energy they are using every day and how they're involved in this whole energy paradigm. So we find a lot of ways that we use them all in everything that we do, from when we go at home until we go to sleep at night. And even when we're sleeping, we're massive energy users, whether it's the energy that we're using to either heat or cool our bedroom, or the bed that we're sleeping on, where somebody has used some energy to make that bed so we could lay there. Whatever the case might be, even your alarm clock, everything is an energy user. And the biggest thing that we look at is transportation, usually, as our biggest energy user. Some of those other things I talked about are really the small part down here where we get into residential use. So you individually may not think you have a whole lot to do with some of the others, but of course somebody had to make your bed, and so that's the industrial part here. So somebody's doing that, or maybe your car or whatever it might be. And then in transportation, of course, we're using a lot. And you can see the progression of increase here. I have not seen anything in any of my readings so far that says that we're going to have a decrease in the amount of energy that we're using in the world today. Everything that I've seen continues to increase, not only in use, but also in costs, and also in some of the impact that we're looking at. So we'll be talking about some of that a little bit later. How much energy did you use today? You probably, they have those little foot things that you put on your leg or whatever to tell you how many steps you take. It's too bad they don't have some sort of meter that we can do that with our energy, because I think people will become a lot more cognizant of what's going on if they could do that. In the United States, we use about 20 million barrels of petroleum a day. Now, this is just concentrating on the petroleum. It doesn't count on some of the other ones, but petroleum, of course, is the biggest user. That's a fair amount. In Japan, they use 5.4, China 5, Germany, Russia, and then South Korea. As you can see, some of these are relatively small, and one that doesn't even get on the top list here is India, who is becoming a much bigger user. So these particular, India is on here at only 2 million barrels a day. So that's how much energy is being used every day. It's just quite phenomenal if you think about a barrel of oil and then multiplying it out times 20 million. That's a lot of petroleum that's going through. This gives you a little bit of from a graphic standpoint as to what's going on, and it has the emerging Asia portion up there. You can see the green really isn't green from where we'd like to think it'd be. The green is really projected use and how much of the new things, and they have that estimated out here to 2025. It's anybody's guess as to when that's going to happen and where it's going to happen. I've seen estimates all over the place. One of the biggest things we have is trying to figure out who's going to produce it and who's going to provide it for us. So I don't know if you asked yourself when you got out of bed this morning, when I use the energy to get or do whatever I want to do, how that's going to affect the environment. We all know about greenhouse gases. What we don't know, we haven't been able to figure out yet exactly what that's going to do to our environment. Most of us believe that it's not going to do good things. And I saw a thing on Discovery or TLC the other day where we might have an ice age instead of global warming. So, you know, take your medicine however way you want it, however effect that the greenhouse gases might have, but we're definitely getting more of that. Waste management continues to be a big problem, I think, in the country, and probably our grandchildren and maybe their grandchildren will be out here at BFI running mining machines trying to dig up old plastic so that they can recycle it and make it into pharmaceuticals or something, as we burn off all of the resources that we have and start burying them in the waste. Global warming, touched on that already. Health effects, of course, depending on what your health is and where you're going, might have some effect on you. Where did the money or the energy that you use come from? So look at some production here, or first of all, sources. It comes from petroleum, coal, gas, natural gas, talking about here, and alternative energy. Now there are some other trace areas, for example, nuclear, and I was thinking of wood, but that's really classified as a renewable resource right now. But these are the primary areas where you got your energy from. Here in Montana, we get some energy from hydroelectric, which kind of falls into the alternative energy, at least a lot of people like to put it there, depending on the environmental impact that you want to give up for that. So, petroleum supplies, this is just to give you a little bit of a feel. Again, we don't know exactly. This is the year 2000, here's 2010 right here. This particular graph is showing that we're starting in a decline already in production. It hasn't quite hit that yet. Peak is estimated out at 2011. And whatever data that you want to take, there's one thing sure, that it's not going this way. We're in a series of, or a period of time right now where it's either going to start peaking within the next few years, or we're already started in a downslope. So no great discoveries are going to change that. Where did the money you spent on the energy go? When you fill your tank with gasoline, that's probably one of the biggest questions that people don't ask themselves. First of all, $10.3 million of barrels, 10.3 million barrels a day is going to Saudi Arabia. Now, I used a real conservative figure of $50 a barrel. And it's kind of funny to say that's a conservative figure right now, because I just looked at a book 2 or 3 weeks ago that said that they were thought by the year 2010 that oil prices are going to be around about $28 a barrel. That's changed dramatically, of course, and of course, it told me exactly what I could do with that book. Boom. Right now we're sending around $515 million a day to Saudi Arabia. Russia, we're sending about $460 million a day. In the U.S., we're hopefully keeping $435 million a day. Iran is getting about $200 million. This doesn't count some of the other things that are going there. Mexico, $190 million. China, about $180 million. And most of that they're probably keeping internally because they're such big energy users. And same is true with a lot of these. But this is where most of the money is flowing. And again, at $50 a barrel. I don't know, what's the quote right now? Is it like 65, 68, give or take, somewhere around in there? So you can increase these numbers accordingly, but this at least gives you a ballpark figure. how were the dollars used that you sent to these countries? Since you're paying for something, when you go at the grocery store, you pay for something, you expect to get something back, right? Well, you're getting something back now with the money that you're investing in the dollars you're spending. Energy, of course, is the world's largest economic driver, and of course petroleum is the energy driver of our energy-bound society today. So it's going into a lot of economic development and creating foundations for the future. Of course, corporations are reinvesting some of this to put it more into the development of other energy resources, to build other infrastructure, and to move things forward as far as the corporation is concerned, and to make their stockholders happy. That's what corporations are all about. They're not here to make the general populace happy or anything like that. They are to make their stockholders happy. If your grandmother or whatever invested in Standard Oil or Exxon or whatever, and the Exxon stocks are going up, they're probably pretty happy about that. Was it last quarter, I think, that I read that was the largest return on investment in the history of any petroleum company in Exxon? Now, was Exxon doing what they're supposed to do? Yeah, they're trying to make their stockholders happy and make their board of directors happy. So stockholders get some of that money. Of course, a lot of our money goes to countries that have differing ideologies. Whether that's good or bad, that's for somebody else to probably determine, but I think when you pay for your gasoline, you need to realize that that's where some of your money is going to go. Finally, one of our big users of our investment dollars is terrorists. You can't buy explosive guns and all the other things that are needed in the terrorism war that's going on in the world without some funds. And every time you fill up your tank, you're donating a little money to that operation. So then, now, and whenever. I take this example just to dramatize because I used to run a service station for my dad when I was growing up, when I was in high school. And so gasoline then, give or take within a penny or two, was about 30 cents a gallon. And when I talk to younger folks, that's just like, you know, Mystery City, that's Disneyland type talk. But, you know, we could fill our cars up with $1 worth of gasoline and have a great night. Today, you know, I just rounded the figure at $2 a gallon, you know, depending on what you drive and where you're getting it and how lucky you are to find a service station that has that. That's a 666% increase. So that's happened over, what do we got here, 46 years. So that was during a period of time when we really had a great supply of petroleum products. We didn't have exceedingly great demand in the world other than the United States. We were about the only game in town. Now, of course, that's changed dramatically. And the question is, what year, 20,000 watt, is it going to be 666% times bigger than it was or it is now? I got a feeling it's going to take a lot less than 46 years to make that happen. And we're going to see it come around much more quickly. And of course, the things that govern that are our supply. We know that supply is going down. Now, I'm not any great economist, and I hate even talking about economics while I'm in the business building here because I'll probably get all of this struck with lightning. But the thing is, supply is definitely going down. At the same time, the worst thing that could happen, demand is going up. If you've been in economics at all, you know those are the two worst things to work against each other. At the same time, the cost of pollution is going up. It's going to cost more to deal with pollution because we've caused so much of it. Terrorism activities, I don't know whether you would classify those going up or down, but they definitely exist out there. And so that has some effect on this because you don't have to blow up too many refineries or too many pipelines to have a dramatic effect on the supply over here. Even a storm like we had here in the United States psychologically affected what went on in the United States as far as cost was concerned. Now, is it Exxon's fault that the price of fuel and a barrel of oil has gone up? I tend to believe that no, it's not their fault. They're doing their job. They're trying to make money. I've been on the stock exchange down in Wall Street and over in Chicago on the commodities. And there's a bunch of young people there just working their rears off, trying to get the prices of everything they're selling in what direction? Up. I mean, that's their job. That's why they are there. That's why only the young survive there, because it is really a hair-raising area. So they've been doing very well, and when they heard that the hurricane might affect oil supply, guess what they were trying to do? They're trying to raise the price of a barrel of oil or a gallon of gasoline or whatever the commodity is. I mean, they were doing their job, and that's the way our economic thing is working now. So all that has an effect on it. Weather, I mentioned that, and innovation, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, has an effect on that, on where we're going to go in the future. So, near and long-term energy paradigm. Needless to say, I think we have to come up with a new world non-petroleum economic model. The facts are there. We cannot exist the way we have been going. And this is a major thing when we're talking about a whole new economic model. We're willing to go to war and do lots of things. And mankind has done that throughout our history, just for energy supplies. And we haven't changed that paradigm much at all. And if we do not come up with a new world petroleum economic model, things are going to be much worse. We need to look at sustainable living by looking at the life cycle analysis of conserving, recycling, and waste management. How much does it cost? How much did it take for this table to be produced right here? How much energy is in this table just to get it made, to bring it here to Missoula, to put it in this room? Then when 4 or 5 students sit on top of it and break it to smithereens, what do we do with that? How do we recycle it? How do we get it back? Birth to death, what happens to that particular resource? That's an energy resource that we're looking at. So, excuse me. One of the things you might want to look at is what your ecological footprint is. And that tells you, as an individual, how many Earths that it's going to take to sustain us. The average in the United States, if I remember right, is 24 acres that it takes for each individual in the United States to survive. Well, there's not enough land in the world to do that. It's kind of a, and it's only 15 questions, a very easy thing to take, but it gives you at least some idea as to what you're doing as far as energy and how you're using it up. Reverse distribution devolution. We need to reverse how we are distributing energy. The energy distribution system that we have right now was put in place back in the early 1900s. And we moved from a community-based distribution system where we had co-ops and like the Milltown Dam out here. We've gone from that to a national distribution system that has tremendous domino effects when things don't work right. At the same time, we're trying to put more energy on the same infrastructure that is basically falling down around itself. Those of you remember the REA in rural electrification, some of those poles still exist out there, and they're not being replaced, and they haven't been replaced. The inability of our distribution partners to work together to transmit energy from one state to the other is old world. They have pancaking situations where so many fees are added on top of each other that it really affects the end consumer a lot. So we need to look at what's happening to the devolution of our distribution system. Low impact transportation. Our SUVs are not low impact transportation. They have a tremendous effect on not only the amount of oil and things that we use, but also on the amount of resources that we use to bring things to our homes or to the table or whatever it might be. When I first put this together, I put no impact transportation. I don't think that will ever happen. We'll always, whether it's a bicycle or whatever we have, it has some impact. Some manufacturer had to make the bicycle, the tires and everything, and we're still going to put it in a landfill or go through free cycles or whatever it's going to take to use that bicycle till its death. But at the same time, that's a lower impact. And so we need to look at that in our new energy paradigm. We finally need to look at and develop a diverse energy system that includes all these different things: wind, solar, biomass, gasification. There is no one answer. When you put all your eggs in one basket, you are really ready to put yourself in jeopardy. And even if it takes this last thing here, I was over at the pet store this weekend, and boy, those guys go. You know, I think we're missing a real opportunity there. And somebody mentioned we have a lot of really fat squirrels on campus here. That if we could just harness that energy, perhaps we could get it going. I was telling another group that I read in the paper where this guy, they had a television and he had like 3 or 4 kids, and the kids were not allowed to watch television unless one of them rode the bicycle that had the little generator on it that ran the TV. And so I think that's kind of a good deal. Get some exercise as you're going along. The conundrum. No easy fixes. I'm sure you came here and thought that I was going to solve everything for you, and I wish I could. I probably wouldn't be here if I was, but going to have a lot of short, long, or near and long-term compromises in order to get to where we want to need. As we move forward in the next 20 years, and as we change this paradigm, every facet of your life is going to change. Now, some of us old guys are not going to have the impact on us because we're kind of riding the bubble here, and we're going to be able to float on through, and it's not going to affect us that much. But everyone that is on this earth in the next 20 years is going to have to change every one of these things in their life. Because that's just the way the whole energy paradigm is going. When we move from the coal to the Industrial Revolution, from the wood burning, everything in people's lives changed. You saw the mass migration of people from the rural area to the city areas. Their whole lives changed on how they lived and where they lived and what they did and how they supplied their food and everything. So we're moving to that. I heard on Paul Harvey the other day that there's a guy that's done some research, and he's estimated that by the year 2060 that we'll be riding horses. So that would be a complete circle here. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. So there's a role for everyone and everyone's responsibility. There's a song out now, it's called Such a Time as This. And such a time as this is that we're going to have to transition. And there is nothing harder on human beings than transitioning from what's comfortable to something that maybe is not as comfortable, at least unknown, and where you want to go into the future. So, such a time as this, we're going to have to do some really different things. We have to have a whole new look at what the new energy paradigm will look like. And it's up to the generations that are going through colleges and schools today that are going to have to make this happen. We need to have it sustainable, renewable, and waste-free. Now, of course, we'd love to have it waste-free. I don't know if we'll ever get there or not, but I think it's an important thing to work toward. As I have come into this whole thing, I think the hydrogen economy is the best answer that I can find to solve this, or come close to solving the conundrum. Even with the hydrogen economy, we can't solve all the things that are ahead of us. Hydrogen is a good and near-term long energy paradigm. Hydrogen economy is an umbrella for a total energy mosaic that needs to evolve through production, storage, safety, distribution, and use. These are the very same things they faced in the late 1800s when they were moving into a petroleum-based economy. They had to do this very same thing. They had to figure out how they were going to do the production, storage, safety, distribution, and use of gasoline. And one of the slides that I have in another presentation quotes the Horseless Carriage Committee of the United States Congress, and I think it was 1879, and they were just worried to death about this new thing that was coming out called gasoline that was just going to be dangerous and that was going to blow up the world and would mean a lot to war efforts and everything else, and of course a lot of that's true. But they solved these problems of production, storage, safety, distribution, and use so that it could become a new paradigm for them. Hydrogen is a product of wind, water, solar, biomass, and gasification. Hydrogen is all around us, and it permeates everything that we see, and so it is out there, and we can be using it to a great effect. Hydrogen is a non-polluting energy carrier. It's not an energy source. Hydrogen is inexhaustible and sustainable energy source. Those of you that are chemistry majors, tell me on the periodic chart, where's hydrogen? Number 1 up in the corner. You can see it up on the chemistry room there. So we got lots of hydrogen. It's been around a long time, and it's inexhaustible. Use hydrogen to fuel ICE engines or fuel cells. ICE is internal combustion engines. I see that as a stepping stone where we'll be able to convert our existing cars that we have to hydrogen, so we reduce the pollution. We won't reduce a lot of the energy input that we have into our internal combustion engines, but we will reduce the pollution and have another source of fuel for our cars. In that respect, I wanted to give you a little bit of lesson here on Fuel Cell 101. A lot of you already know this, and to you it'll be a review, but I'll go through it. This is not trademarked. You can copy this particular drawing. This reminds me of football almost, you know, but hopefully it'll be a little more understandable. So we start out here with water. And what we do with water, because water is a big container of hydrogen because it's H2O, we run it through an electrolyzer. The electrolyzer separates the water into two groups, the hydrogen and the oxygen. So they can both be stored, but in this case we're most interested in the hydrogen. The hydrogen then, you run it through a fuel cell, which is represented here by this membrane, because that's the main part of a fuel cell. The protons can go through the fuel cell, but the fuel cell itself rejects the electrons and repels them. They can't pass through there, so they go back and around and over and across. And as they travel around the membrane, they furnish power to our little unit down here. And then they continue on because they're in a hurry to gang back up with their protons, and then eventually, under the right circumstances, be with oxygen and create water again as the exhaust of the system. Now, I brought along a little model here today, and which illustrates what I've got there. So what we got here is solar voltaics. Everybody's familiar with those, where you can take sunlight and convert that into electricity. As we know, the sun doesn't always shine, especially in Missoula, Montana. So what we're going to do is convert that into hydrogen so that we'll have the hydrogen to store later on, because it's going to be hot tonight and we need a fan to make us cool. So we take the energy here from the sunlight and we run it through an electrolyzer here. This electrolyzer does just what we've got up there, where it separates the oxygen and hydrogen. We're going to store the hydrogen over here, the oxygen over here. So now I've done that already before I got here today. And so I've been carrying around a little bit of hydrogen here so that we'll have something to cool us off. Now we want the fan to work, and so we're going to run this hydrogen now through the fuel cell. This fuel cell has that membrane that we're talking about up here, and we're going to run the hydrogen through there. And if everything works right, the hydrogen and the electrons are going to work and make our fan work here. So that's all there is to it. That's as difficult and as complex as it gets. Now, the real secret to all this is, again, back to Guido Sarducci's supply and demand. As soon as we can get a big supply of low-cost electrolyzers and fuel cell, by getting more demand, then this will become a lot more cheap, and we can make it all work for all of us. So I'll leave this here and you can look at it afterwards. Where are we at here? Okay, so uses of hydrogen. Of course, one of the biggest uses is transportation. This is General Motors' billion-dollar car called their roller skate or skateboard technology, where they've got a fuel cell here in the middle, and they've got hydrogen stored around the outside. It's wire-driven like an F-16. You choose what type of vehicle top you want on, either a sports car or a van or whatever. Because these are run really by electrical motors, because that's what the fuel cell does, to convert this into electricity. You can have as much torque, you can squeal your tires as much, you can go as fast as you want. However you want to design it, you could. So this is where the future of transportation is going. Another use of hydrogen is electricity production. I saw a unit when I was up at the National or International Hydrogen meeting in Montreal. There's a unit like this that you set in your home. You hook your hose into it, and in the case for the energy startup, they used natural gas and reformed that to get it going. But then it would furnish the hydrogen for the fuel cell that would power your home during the day, and then you disconnect it and hook the hydrogen into your car at night, and it fills your car up with hydrogen. So you could have your own electrical plant. Distributive energy, like in your home. Appliances, they have fuel cell refrigerators now. And we look at anything that needs energy, whether it's the pacemaker you're going to have or the battery for your laptop. All that falls in the category. So We've been working a lot on a number of projects here at the University of Montana, and I'm going to go through those quickly. Through the Department of Energy, the research and development we've been doing there, we first set up a education site called h2education.com. We launched that last October, and that's a national program that we put together for DOE and is accessible now. We are still working on putting together a hydrogen safety training center here at the university. My feeling, as you can see, is education first, safety second, and then Alternative Energy Futures Park is something that we've worked on to put together a scheme for an education facility here. The Energy Technicians Program, we have a program that we put together, a web-based program to train energy technicians, and 2 of those classes are being offered through EVST this semester, so that's kind of the kickoff of that. And Gene is working on a project here to take this course, and Gene is sitting right here. He is an intern, and he's from Taiwan, and he's working on possibilities of making that available over the internet so that we can use it in Taiwan and China to do energy technician training. And we can ask him some questions later if you have some. Energy Park of the Future, coal to a hydrogen facility, is a project I'm working on with an investor out of Virginia and up in the Judith Basin to put a coal to hydrogen plant in the Judith Basin in collaboration with Shell. DOT Research and Development is a new grant we just got, and so that's on the front end of that, so we're working to pull that one together. We have an alternative energy learning site that Brian Kearns had put together out at the Montech facility. That's where our wind turbine's at. I don't know if you've seen it over on the other end of town here, but we've got that. Plus, we just got a grant through UM and Northwest Energy that's going to make it possible to tie in some solar voltaics and our fuel cell. The thing we have left, we want to get an electrolyzer out there and some batteries. So we have a whole system where people can go out there and easily kick the tires and see how all this works together. Finally, we're working on the Missoula Wind Resource Project, which is a compilation of a number of things we're working on to measure wind around Missoula here and find out what we can do in the future to power Missoula. Then finally, Brian got a grant here this last few months from the USDA to do biomass to hydrogen research with a company that we're partnered with out of Colorado. Wind development is an important thing that we need to look at. You can see how much wind is, because that's one of the best renewable resources that we have in the United States that's being underutilized. You can see the number of megawatts that are being produced in each one of these states. Montana is quite credible now. Of course, that was brought about primarily by the new Judith Basin installation, where I think it's 125 megawatts. So we're at 138 now, but you know, instead of being the bottom of the list all the time, we're right up there in the fight, and there's no reason why that can't be generated more. This is a more detailed map. This gives you some of the wind intensities around the state. And of course, the higher the wind intensity, the more megawatts of electricity that you can generate on a more regular basis. The more electricity you can generate, you can either put it out on distribution lines in a traditional sense, or you can do what we've done here, where you can electrolyze the electricity, use the electricity to electrolyze water, and then store it as hydrogen, and use hydrogen as another energy source. Okay, so the givens we have to work with, one is the energy conundrum will not disappear. Secondly, the petroleum age will come to an end. Third, there's a crying need for resurgence in American know-how, science, technology, and engineering. Those of you who are in touch with this know where the United States is in the industrial world as far as our science and technology and engineering is right now. We're around 25th, 28th, depending on where you look at, as far as where we are. And that's been steadily declining since 1995. So we are taking back seat to almost all the major industrial countries around the world right now. And the chances of us solving and getting out of this energy conundrum at the rate we're going with that sort of talent being depended on from other countries is pretty slim. So this is a major thing that it's got to be dealt with. Triple bottom line needs to be dealt with as far as the economic, social, and environmental balancing. There is nothing that we'll do as far as energy that I can see that won't have some impact somewhere on someone. I get a kick out of people that will say, well, we got to go to completely renewable energy, but they don't want to have a wind turbine in their backyard. There's other situations like that. So there has to be some sort of balance out there to make this whole thing work and being able to work through it all. Action is needed. Such times as this, our choices are, we can either lead or follow, we can either innovate or stagnate, we can either collaborate or isolate, we can either be proactive or reactive in our education, or we can find new places of funding or stay with the zero-summing that we have now. So, if you have any questions, one thing I've got here, if you're interested in becoming an energy paradigm shifter, I have a list here that I'd be happy to have you put your name on so I can keep in contact with you. We have 3 of us that are working on the project now that are available. And both Brian Curtin's here in the purple shirt, and Jin Hua is here, so we can answer some questions if you have any. Yes, sir?
Using hydrogen and as its source, coal or oil, aren't you just expending those resources and just displacing the pollution to somewhere else in the
Yeah, that's an excellent question or statement, because we are. I think that the first near-term thing we have to do is find a source of hydrogen so we can get off the petroleum diet. One of those good sources of hydrogen is coal. Is that a long-term thing? I don't think so. I think that may only last us for maybe a decade or 2, or maybe longer, I'm not sure. But the one thing about it is it does displace a lot of the pollution and the global warming problems that we have. So there's 2 advantages there. One, it's a new source of energy. 2, it displaces pollution. Does it still have an impact on our environment? Especially on our physical environment? Very much so. Is it something that Montana is very much interested in? Very much so. They have a chance of being the hydrogen Saudi Arabia of the world by using its coal. So I don't see that and those political pressures and economic pressures just disappearing simply because we'd like to not have that impact. So I see that as a near-term solution. I don't see it as a long-term solution. Yes, ma'am.
How will that coal technology affect the water in Montana?
The good thing about the coal gasification process is a lot of it is cyclical, in that you use the water and you recycle it and you bring the water out of the coal itself where it's stored. But it will have, especially over in eastern Montana, where there's not much coal or much water for anything out there. So it'll have an impact there. Coal has varying degrees or percentages of content of water. I think the coal out in eastern Montana is like 30%. So that is water that, quote unquote, isn't being used anyway. So that may not have an effect that way. But as far as pollution, it does not pollute the water. Usually, the systems I've seen anyway, when it goes through the system, whether it's through a fuel cell or through electrolysis or through the coal gasification, you have cleaner resources than when you started as far as water is concerned. But it does use a quantity of water.
Even with harvesting the coal?
Yes.
Yeah,
right. Right. Yeah, and you're thinking like coal bed methane. Where they inject water at high pressure to force, or I'm sorry, they inject pressure and then it forces out the water with a high content of sulfur. And
that, but I'm also, yeah, I'm familiar with
okay.
it. I'm also thinking of, I mean, I haven't seen coal
gasification
harvested here in Montana. I have seen it harvested in West Virginia.
Yeah, I used to live there too.
And the water that they pool, that they put in ponds there from the surface mining of mountaintop removal is incredibly toxic.
Oh, for sure.
So that's
well, the good thing about coal gasification process is it takes all the trace and major elements out of it instead of burning it and putting it up into the atmosphere, whether it's with the water or whether it's with a coal gen furnace. So if there's sulfur, which we don't have a lot of that in Montana, but if there's sulfur or mercury or whatever, those become sequestered products, basically. Sulfur is used in a number of things, in road construction and other things, so they become other products instead of burning them and putting them in the atmosphere. Is this the best solution? Not. Is it an interim solution? I think it's one of the better ones I've seen. Terry?
I have two related questions. Obviously, almost every major auto manufacturer in the world is doing something on hydrogen. Do they, from your perspective, see this as a real solution? I mean, is this a big, hairy deal, or is it just something that they've done like they used to do solar? Part two is the President's recent State of the Union, sustainable fuel became an issue. Is this just shuck and jive, or is this do you have a sense if there's any commitment?
Well, what I saw when I first got into this, what I saw the manufacturers doing, they were doing research and development in a number of areas, batteries and hydrogen and flywheels and you name it, there's all sorts of it. Almost all the major, or all of them that I know of, anyway, the major manufacturers of automobiles in the world have switched all of their R&D to hydrogen. Now, that still incorporates the batteries and some of that hybrid stuff that we're talking about, but those are steps to a hydrogen car. So they're putting their marbles in that pot. Now, do they believe firmly that it's going to happen? Well, it's again the chicken and the egg thing. There's no distribution system. So if they turned out 1 million hydrogen vehicles tomorrow, they couldn't sell them. So it's going to be a switching off all the way along to move that forward. But they are on board, as are the major oil companies. They're starting to invest in doing more with hydrogen development because the one thing that they have to keep happy are stockholders. And if they run out of fuel, they are out of business unless they've diversified and come up with something else, in this case hydrogen. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I asked part two about the State of the Union and whether that reflects any true change in our thinking.
Until we get to almost a situation where we have like a Manhattan Project and we're investing that sort of billions and trillions of dollars in this, it's not going to get solved very quickly. It's going to be a very evolving thing instead of a revolutionary thing. So I think it's just kind of a Band-Aid at this point. I mean, it's better than not saying anything, I'll say that, but yeah. Go ahead.
See if I can pin you down with some numbers here. Are you saying for both short-term hydrogen solution and long-term hydrogen that it takes less energy to produce that hydrogen?
No.
Than the current fossil fuel paradigm?
No, because gasoline is a very efficient producer of energy. And I can't remember the numbers, and maybe Brian has that at the top of his brain better than me. But I think in coal it's only like at 80% at best. Fuel cell technology now, even if you use some of the heat from the fuel cell itself, is around 60, some of the best I've seen. So we've got a ways to go before we rest and to find the perfect solution. Yeah.
I mean, in terms, this is an ethics forum, and when I think of this in terms of ethics, I think of our life purpose. So what's the goal of our being here on Earth? And are we doing this so that we can have the energy we need so that I can watch the Super Bowl with my friends on TV and throw a party, or am I here for a larger, meaningful purpose? And I guess that's what comes to me when I think of, as this discussion of energy expenditure and cost, and particularly, as you mentioned, that my generation and my children and their children, should we survive, are going to be living in a much different world than, say, my parents and my grandparents. Well, I already do live in a very different world than my grandparents. But so, and what will I see, or what do I vision my purpose to be? It's not to consume. Right now we have a very consumptive mentality of, well, my purpose is to go and provide my family and myself with all of these things that cost a lot of energy and are very destructive to the life systems of this planet.
Well, unfortunately, you know, our society is one that the only time we really listen to anything is when that gets up to $13 a gallon, or even when it started getting up to, you know, past $2 a gallon. And I agree with you that we have, you know, we know what sustainability is, we know what it should be, but there's a very small part of the population that's willing to live in a sustainable way. And I think in a lot of respects, what you're alluding to is we're going to be forced into that if we are to maintain our planet here, and if we are going to have enough resources to survive on. So that's why I see it as a conundrum. We are not of the mindset yet in this country anyway, and most of the world. Everybody's trying to copy us, whether it be China or India or where it might be. And we're trying to get Iraq to copy us, and Iran and whomever else. It's a conundrum that we can't, we're on a path that doesn't have a solution. Was there another question? Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's almost the same question as the one at the back there, but not in terms of the efficiency of the technology. When you try and release the hydrogen so that you can have it as a useful source, does it take more energy to release the hydrogen into a useful source than you get out on the other side of the fuel cell? And then sort of a follow-up question. If you're using coal as your source of that hydrogen, how much are we relying on sequestration of carbon dioxide in big caves underground? Because I just don't like the sound of that.
Yeah. Okay, for the first one, as far as how much energy it takes to move it into through the fuel cell, it kind of depends on what form that you have your hydrogen in. You know, here, of course, we don't have any pressure at all going through here. We have a little bit of pressure to push it through the fuel cell, but it depends on how you store it. Either going to store it in a gaseous form under pressure, so that takes power in order to pressurize it, then get it to the pressure system wherever the fuel cell will handle it. You might want to store it in refrigerated in liquid form, where you got to pay for refrigerating it, then you got to de-refrigerate it and run it through a fuel cell, unless you design a fuel cell to make that. So I don't know that I've seen the data on exactly what the cost ratio there is, Chris, but I think that there's lots of engineering innovation and things that's going to have to happen to really make it worthwhile. Then with gasification, coal gasification, the first solution they had there was to simply quote unquote, pipe it under the ocean and let the ocean absorb the CO2, or let it just settle. Whatever happens to CO2 in the ocean in large numbers, I don't think anybody really knows that yet. The technology that is being used primarily now is sequestration, like you're talking about, and putting it in caverns and putting it back into the earth and sequestering it there. Those are the only two that I know of, and they're really looking and needing more breakthroughs as to how to combine CO2 with something else, perhaps, and make it into some usable or more handleable substance than CO2 gas. So that's still a question out there. Yeah?
Are they envisioning like large wind farms to produce hydrogen through electrolysis?
That's the ultimate goal. The Phoenix project out of Arizona wants to do the Manhattan project, and build for 2-3 years, whatever, build an unbelievable number of wind turbines in the windy sites in the United States and produce all of our energy that way.
Have they done studies on the ecological impact of large wind farms?
Well, there's been some fairly negative studies over in California, as they were some of the first to do it. I can't remember on there, but I think they had like 2,000 megawatts in California, something like that. They've used some old technology where birds got involved in it. They used some old technology where they lined the turbines up wrong, and one would shadow another one. So there's lots of things that the learning curve has changed. Now they've got 2.5 megawatt turbines that they're putting offshore over in Europe. All the implications of those, I don't know that they've all been studied, Dane, but the impact has, of course, been a lot less than a coal-fired furnace might have. So that's some of the trade-offs that they've been looking at. And, the view shed is definitely impacted. Anything else? Thank you so much. We're right on schedule.